Somehow, in between Dad's acts of domestic terrorism, I managed to do all the things a little girl should do. I suppose Mum's incredible strength and devotion provided me with the space to learn and grow as normally as I could under the circumstances. I was a proper mummy's girl. She encouraged me to sing along to records on her old gramophone, and we would watch all the old black and white musical films together. I picked up all the lyrics easily, but singing and acting wasn't my first career choice at that age. What do you want to be when you grow up is a fairly normal question to pose to a young child. Boys often come back with answers like a fireman or an astronaut. Young girls, on the other hand, might say a nurse or a vet. Me? Well, I wanted to be a stripper. I remember when I was maybe 5 or 6 years old, walking with Mum in Bethnal Green when I noticed this lady dolled up to the nines. Now, I'd be lying if I said that I hadn't always loved makeup, the smell of it as well as the smell of perfume. I loved heels that went clippity-clop. I loved it even more when the heels used to scuff the floor in rhythm. I loved anything feminine then, and I still do now. Anyway, this woman looked incredibly glamorous to me. She was wrapped up in a fur coat and looked impossibly rich and classy to my young eyes. "Oh, Mum," I said, "doesn't she look lovely?" Mum looked bemused. "No, Martine, she doesn't." "Yes, she does," I insisted. "Martine," she said, looking me straight in the eye, "do you know what she does for a living? She is an exotic dancer, a stripper." "Oh," I said, "I'd love to be a stripper if I looked like her." For quite a while after that, when people asked me, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" I'd reply, "A stripper, thank you very much." My mum doesn't always mention that little episode in my life. I suppose she's embarrassed by it. However, when I first began this autobiography, I wanted to show how inspirational certain things can be in a person's life. I should also say a word about my first teacher, Miss Wright, who I still remember fondly for her affection as much as anything else. I used to love writing stories in infant school and let my imagination run riot, but one particular essay prompted Miss Wright to ask Mum to come in and see her at school. My teacher was concerned because of something I'd written in class. A horror story. My teacher told Mum she was worried about what was going on in my head. "I don't think Martine should be writing like this," she explained. I can't remember now what it was I wrote, and I've lost my early exercise books, but it had obviously been inspired by something that had happened with my dad. I suppose my imagination had gone into overdrive, and I poured all my confusion into this horror story. Mum was shocked. "I'm dreadfully sorry," she apologised to Miss Wright. "We've had a bit of trouble at home, and it's understandably been playing on Martine's mind. I'm trying to do my best to keep her away from all of that, but it's obviously affecting her." I'd been at junior school for about 6 months when I got to perform in my first play, Away in a Manger, staged in front of an audience of proud mums and dads. I absolutely loved it. My performance as an angel all those years ago has left me with a lasting nickname. Mum had other nicknames for me, but Angel really stuck. We later named one of our companies Angel, and I have it tattooed on my right ankle. When I moved up to Shuckerwell Juniors, aged 6 and a bit, I got my first taste of performing in a proper play, and my first experience of jealousy from the other kids who got the hump because I landed all the lead parts. A girl called Pippa took a big dislike to me and gave me my first taste of bullying. I was only 4'7", and everyone used to say I was a real titch until I suddenly shot up by about 5 inches in my teens. Pippa was much taller than me. For some reason, she'd started to tell people that I was bullying her. I'd have been squashed in one go if I tried. The strange thing was that people did believe her, and I kept getting called to see the head teacher who'd say sternly, "Martine, you're making people upset." And I used to say, No, I'm not. And I wasn't. I had some good friends at junior school too, and grew particularly close to 3 Afro-Caribbean mates. Io, a big girl who had boobs even in junior school, I swear, as well as Ada and Charmaine. We used to bring tapes into school, stick them in an old Fisher-Price cassette player and dance to Bob Marley in the playground. Another really happy memory for me around this time, when I was about 6 or 7 years old, was the arrival of Poochie, a little puppy Mum had bought for me. Now Poochie looked just like Gizmo from the Gremlins movie. A lot of people say that their dogs look like that, but my dog really did. I called her Poochie because I originally wanted this cuddly toy dog with pink ears and paws. Lovely little Poochie, that's how they described her in the Argos catalogue. I remember quite clearly being so happy with this puppy, I was absolutely ecstatic. I used to put her in my doll's pram and take her for a walk. Then when I was older, she used to be put on the back of my bike while I pedalled around. That was a really happy time. though Keith's surprise appearances hung over both of us like a black cloud. That said, Mum still managed to have some fun. She was a very attractive woman, and a lot of men were interested in her. She was also very aware of the damage, the mental harm that Dad had inflicted on me over the years. Then Keith's sister told Jenny about a solicitor who might be able to sort things out. He immediately got an injunction which prevented Keith from coming near our home. He violated the injunction on several occasions, but Mum would phone the police and they'd arrive straight away. Unable to terrorise us in the old ways, he broke into a house in the district and abducted a friend of Mum's. She was 16 at the time and a beautiful young woman. What happened during that abduction wasn't very nice, but even weirder, throughout the entire ordeal she was with him, Keith kept calling her Jenny. He released her the following day and took her home. She made a statement during which she revealed that Keith told her he was going to kill Jenny and me. "Nobody's going to stand in my way," is what he told me, she said. This time, the police installed a panic button where we lived and told Mum that if Keith did ever come back, she need only press the button and they would be there within seconds. They also put a warrant out for his arrest, but as Keith was still on the loose that night, Mum and I went to stay with another friend, Pamela Paris, who had been a good mate of ours for years. Somehow Keith found out where we were. At 3 a.m. that night, with me sound asleep, Mum and Pam heard noises outside. Pam saw it was Keith and phoned the police, but he jumped over the garden fence and escaped. It seems he meant what he said about his intention to harm me and Mum, as he'd left an array of weapons behind, including battery acid, a knife and some lead piping. The following day, he turned up at my grand's house as if nothing had happened. Mum called the police and he was remanded in custody. At the magistrate's court committal hearing, Mum's brother Uncle Chris seemed particularly depressed. Softly he told Mum, "I don't think I'm much longer for this world." Mum assumed he was just nervous about the trauma of having to give evidence in court. It proved to be the last conversation they ever had. 2 days later, Mum got a phone call from Gran saying that Chrissy hadn't been to work that day. Mum rang Uncle Lawrence. "Nobody can find Chrissy," she said anxiously. Lawrence went round and looked through the letterbox and saw someone was lying on the settee. Worried, he called the police who kicked the door down. Lawrence wasted no time brushing past the officers and found Chrissy lying dead. Mum thinks seeing his little brother like that has stuck with Lawrence ever since. He's never really got over it. Chris had died just a month before his 18th birthday, and it was an immense tragedy for our family. Mum remembers Chrissy as a sensitive, handsome boy who fell in with the wrong sort of gang. He began glue sniffing and smoking the odd bit of dope. From dope, his drug intake increased to barbiturates, uppers, downers, whatever really, and we later found out that this was what killed him. He overdosed on barbiturates, but the post-mortem showed his lungs were virtually destroyed by glue sniffing and heavy smoking. Chris was around from when I was born and he loved all the kids in the family, but especially me, his little niece. The case against Keith was set to go ahead when Mum's friend vanished. Mum got a call from Detective Sergeant Coomer saying that they couldn't find her. She was so terrified of giving evidence against Keith that she'd upped and left. Her evidence was crucial. Without it, the case had to be dropped and Keith was a free man back on the prowl. Mum hasn't set eyes on her since. But there was also something good in the air. During all the tribulations that had led up to Keith's release, Mum had met a new man. His name was John McCutcheon. She first met him at a dinner dance at the King's Head pub in Hackney. John was stocky, averagely tall and hailed from Glasgow, with a wonderfully rich accent. His hair was dreadful in those days. I remember he had a bad perm with blonde streaks, but their relationship was perfect for Mum, who soon invited him to move in. For me, by far, the most important feeling I got from having John around was feeling safe for the first time in my life. Selfish, I know, but I realised there was something for me in all of this as well as something for my mum. John, it soon became clear, was nothing like my dad. He was a man who wasn't going to take what he wanted, then turn nasty and go away. So they married, and things were ticking over remarkably well compared to the horrors of before. I should have known it would have been too good to last. Keith served Mum with a summons for access. And not just access, but sole custody, removing me from the care of Mum and John and placing me almost entirely in his hands. The shock was so overwhelming that it floored me. The case was quite hard for a 9-year-old to follow, but I remember Mum's barrister saying all these things about our past to the judge. At the end of that, the judge said that he wanted to talk to me privately in his chambers. I was in a little cream dress Mum had bought for me from somewhere near where she worked as a manager at Alfred Marks Employment Bureau in Victoria. It was horrible, completely out of fashion by the 1980s, with an elasticated waist and a little belt that you put in through hoops. If the judge was presiding over a fashion contest, I would have been on a complete loser. He had big cheeks and twinkly eyes. He pointed to a big chair next to his and said, "That's a nice dress." I suppose he was just being nice so I wouldn't be too overwhelmed by it all. Either that or he needed glasses. "Do you understand what you're here for today, Martine?" I said I did. "We just need to decide whether you want to spend time with your daddy or not," he went on in his deep judge-like voice. I said that I didn't want to spend any more time with my dad, ever. Without batting an eyelid, he replied, "Why is that?" And I explained that it was because he kept doing horrible things to my mum. I've seen him hit her. I saw him smash her head on a sink. I described how she'd sometimes even have to go to hospital after the beatings. I told him, "I just don't think Dad's a nice man. I don't want to be with him anymore, please." The judge listened to it all and then said, "Martine, I'm going to tell you something and I hope it makes you very happy. You will never, ever have to see your dad again." I remember I giggled with delight and then asked, "Really? Can you really do that?" And he replied, "Yes, I can do that." Unbelievably, I then told him there was something else I didn't want to put up with anymore. "And what's that, young lady?" Quick as a flash I said, "I don't want ever to have to eat Brussels sprouts again." Keith was denied any access to me, and he was also told he could never apply for it again, and we went off to celebrate. I remember Mum saying that the judge had told her I was the most level-headed 9-year-old he'd ever spoken to in his life. My confidence comes from my mum. She's a strong, determined woman. Not long after this, Mum changed my surname to Johns, McCutcheon, so that for the first time in my 9 years on this earth, we could all be a proper family. It felt great.